Imagine a boy so fragile that no one believed he would survive. A child scarred by fever, destined for a short life, who carried on his shoulders the weight of threatened existence from his first breath. But the improbable happened. This boy not only survived, but became one of the greatest teachers in history. His name echoes to this day, spanning more than 1,000 years, as a symbol of wisdom, faith, and perseverance. You are about to learn the story of Bede the Venerable, the monk who transformed illness into strength, silence into knowledge, and pain into a song of hope. Prepare yourself, because what you are about to hear is not just a biography. It is a life lesson capable of transforming the way you view your own challenges. Imagine a boy of just 7 years old, too small to be burdened with so many decisions, being taken by his own parents to the gates of a monastery, while other children would cry, clinging to their mother's robes. He simply accepts, not because he didn't feel her absence, but because a flame was already lit within him. It's like when someone realizes early on that they were born for something greater, like that young man who finds a guitar and, without ever having studied music, already feels that the sound of its strings belongs to his heart. This was Bede. From an early age, he saw himself as part of something eternal. In the silent environment, where the routine consisted of prayer and study, many boys felt fear, longing, or loneliness. But Bede saw silence as an invisible companion, almost as if God were whispering in his ear. Think of when you enter a quiet place and can suddenly hear your own clearest thoughts. It is in this inner space that great ideas are born. For Bede, every moment of silence was an opportunity to hear what no one else heard. It was a different school, not just of literature, but of spirituality. And the discipline of the cloister was not punishment, but training. He understood early on that every great achievement requires effort and sacrifice, like an athlete who wakes before dawn to train, or a student who skips going out to prepare for an exam. Bede also chose a narrow path. His childhood was not filled with toys scattered on the floor, but with words, chants, and contemplation. This early life shaped not only a monk, but a wise man who would learn to transform each experience into wisdom. And this childhood flame still had much to be tested. As a child, Bede was struck by a violent fever that nearly took his life. While other boys might have given in to tears, he did something different. Even weakened, he continued to sing hymns, as if his soul refused to be silenced. This scene is powerful because it shows that, even on the brink of death, his faith did not tremble. It is like that person who, in the midst of a crisis, still finds the strength to smile and believe, revealing that their hope lies in something much greater than their own pain. His body weakened, but his spirit flourished. This moment became a turning point. Surviving the illness was not only a physical victory, but a confirmation of purpose. When he finally recovered, he was led to the monastery library, and there he found his true home. Imagine a child standing before shelves filled with manuscripts, feeling that each page had a secret. For him, each book was an invitation to delve into a new dimension, and the Holy Scriptures were the center of all this discovery. The fever could have been his end, but it became the gateway to his life's mission. It's curious how adversity often reveals our essence. Many believe that difficulties destroy us, but in truth, they show what we are made of. For Bede, the fever was like a trial by fire that honed his vocation. In pain, he found direction. In fragility, he found strength. And instead of becoming someone marked by the fear of death, he transformed himself into a tireless seeker of truth, literature, and God. That illness didn't extinguish the flame he carried. It only made it brighter, preparing him for the great works that awaited him. As he grew up within the monastery, Bede experienced not only the silence of prayers, but also the silence of absence. With each season, he saw brothers and teachers depart this life, victims of illness, weakness, or simply the passing of time. For a boy barely out of childhood, this succession of goodbyes was incredibly hard. But instead of losing himself in grief, Bede cultivated a silent vow within himself to dedicate his entire existence to the pursuit of knowledge and faith. It was as if each death before his eyes was a reminder that time was short, and that his mission needed to be accomplished without delay. This choice was not made aloud, nor recorded in documents. It was a secret vow, kept only in his heart, that would guide every step of his life. Just as an athlete secretly decides to be the best and trains when no one is watching, Bede also decided that he would be faithful to the end, even if no one knew. This intimate discipline is what separates ordinary people from extraordinary ones. In silence, he was forging the foundation of his greatness, and this vow sustained him. While others might falter, become discouraged, or resign, Bede maintained his steadfast routine. Prayer, study, writing, absolute dedication. It was as if each loss were a seed sown in the soil of his heart, and from this pain sprouted an unshakable determination. There was no room for distractions or a life without purpose. He increasingly became a man of single focus, with a single mission: to transform everything he learned into shared wisdom, as if in a hurry to leave a legacy before his own time came. As he matured, Bede became living proof that true greatness is not born of titles or positions, but of constancy. His daily habit was simple and powerful: prayer, study, and writing. While many sought recognition, he sought clarity. And it was precisely this tireless discipline that transformed him into a master of Scripture, someone capable of uniting the depth of faith with the richness of knowledge. He not only read, but also interpreted, translated, and commented on each word with the skill of someone who sees beyond the letter. Bede didn't just want to understand. He wanted to enlighten others, to open horizons for minds and hearts. This gift made him different. In a time when access to education was limited, Bede didn't keep what he learned to himself. On the contrary, he wrote so that others could learn as well. It's like someone who, upon discovering a treasure, decides to share every coin rather than hide it. His commentary on the Bible, his dedication to preserving the history of the church, and his ability to teach even the simplest of people demonstrated a pedagogical heart, passionate about the mission of transmitting. Bede understood that knowledge only has meaning when it becomes a legacy, and the more he studied, the more he became a reference. His fellow believers recognized him as a guide, not only for his intelligence but also for his humility. He was a master who taught with simplicity, who spoke of profound things in accessible words. And this is the mark of every great leader: not to complicate, but to clarify; not to aggrandize oneself, but to elevate others. This is how Bede, the boy who nearly died of fever, the young man who took a secret vow, became a beacon amid the darkness of his time. He transformed his life into a living book, where every page was written with devotion and dedication. As the years passed, Bede's body began to show signs of frailty. The sleepless nights devoted to manuscripts, the long hours hunched over parchment, and the rigid discipline took their toll. Illnesses came in waves, constant reminders that even the most brilliant men are made of fragile flesh. But instead of giving in to lament, Bede saw each pain as part of the journey. His illness was not an obstacle, but a trial by fire that refined his faith and determination. While many would seek rest, he sought intensity. He never slowed down his studies or writing, even when the fever returned and his bones weighed heavily. There was a quiet urgency about him, as if he knew time was short. And at the same time, his patience and serenity inspired everyone around him. The ailing monk showed, by his example, that true strength is not the absence of pain, but the ability to move forward despite it. Bede bore his burden as one who understands that every suffering can be transformed into an offering to God. It was during this period of constant illness that his greatness became even more evident. His writings gained depth, as if watered not only by ink but also by tears. And, ironically, it was when his body was weakest that his mind shone most. The master of Scripture, physically weakened, rose spiritually like a giant. He understood that illness did not diminish him. On the contrary, it brought him closer to the mystery of eternity. Bede was being prepared to leave the greatest of all legacies, the example of perseverance that transcends the limits of the flesh and directly touches the soul. The time came when Bede's strength no longer responded as before. His body was consumed by illness, but his mind remained awake, firm as a flame resisting the wind. In the last days of his life, his monastery brothers found him still dictating teachings, correcting texts, and, above all, singing hymns. It was as if his soul, now freed from the bonds of pain, began to rehearse the melody of eternity. Bede knew his departure was near, but he did not view death as a tragedy. He saw it as a definitive encounter with the one to whom he had dedicated every word and effort. In the early morning hours of his departure, The scene was silent and solemn. Between pauses of labored breathing, Bede raised his weak voice in hymns of praise, and each note seemed to penetrate the monastery walls, reaching the heavens. He departed not in despair, but in song. His entire life had been a preparation, and now, in the final instant, he delivered his final lesson, that death does not silence those who live by faith, but only leads them to the eternal choir. Until his last breath, Bede never ceased to teach, for his silence was music, and his surrender, prayer. This final canticle was not merely a farewell. It was the crowning of an entire existence. His disciples kept in their memory not only his written words, but also the image of a master who departed serenely, leaving behind not sadness but hope. Bede showed that it is possible to die in peace when one has lived with purpose. His death was a living testament to the fact that, even in the face of death, the soul could be filled with light. And so, the monk who nearly died as a child, who overcame fevers, studied tirelessly, and taught generations, left history with song that still echoes, the sound of faith that never dies. The life of Bede the Venerable is a powerful calling for each of us. He was not born with ease, nor was he guaranteed greatness, but he knew how to transform each challenge into a stepping stone to climb higher. From a fragile child who barely survived to the adult who illuminated centuries with his writings, his journey shows that true impact comes not from the absence of problems, but from how we face life's pains. Bede teaches us that faith, combined with constant effort, has the power to transform limitations into achievements, and even illness into spiritual strength. His legacy is not limited to ancient books, but lives on an example of resilience and courage that inspires to this day. He proved that there are no excuses for stopping when purpose is greater than one's own fatigue. His days of tireless study, his nights of prayer, and even his final hymns show that living with meaning is more important than living in comfort. Bede's story is a reminder that when we dedicate our lives to something greater than ourselves, we become eternal, for we leave marks that time cannot erase. And so, before us remains a figure of the monk who conquered through perseverance, who shone even in the midst of fever, and who departed with hymns on his lips. Bede invites us to reflect. What are we doing with the time we've been given? Are we wasting it or building something that can resonate beyond our lifetime? This is the question we cannot ignore, because as Bede showed, true immortality lies not only in surviving death, but in living in such a way that, even after we're gone, our voice continues to inspire.